Welcome to Lucid Horizon. In this series of programs, we talk about education and democracy and how democracy can elevate the quality of education, in turn, how education can actually promote democracy in countries that doesn't exist and stabilize democracy in the countries that do exist. In this series of shows, we've been fortunate enough to benefit from the insights provided by Professor Hooshang Amirahmadi, the distinguished Professor of International Relations from Rutgers University. Today, we are going to talk about a very important event which was just concluded in Austria, Vienna. There's the so-called contract and agreement between Iran and the 4 European countries and the United States and China and Russia, the so-called Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. Welcome to the show, Professor Amirahmadi.
Thank you very much, Professor Kangarlu. I appreciate this invitation. Looking forward to our dialogue.
As you know, JCPOA has been in negotiation for almost 10 years. It reached an agreement in 2015 under the Obama administration. As a result of the agreement between Islamic Republic, the so-called P5+1, consisting of Russia, China, Germany, France, England, and the United States. The agreement was basically based on containment of Iran's nuclear activity, specifically nuclear enrichment. And as a result, the members of the JCPOA, P5+1, they agreed to lift a series of sanctions, economic sanctions against the Islamic Republic. This was implemented in 2015, and in 2016, after President Trump came to office, within a year and a half, within 18 months after he's assuming the office and assuming power, he withdrew from JCPOA to fulfill his campaign promises of blocking the US participation in JCPOA. And as a result, in the last 2.5 years and 3 years, the sanctions that President Trump has imposed against the Islamic Republic has been crippling, has basically brought the Iran's economy, at least the sales of oil and natural gas to its customers, to a grinding halt, and it has posed a great economic hardship on the Islamic Republic. So after Biden came to office and negotiation, he promised, as a part of his campaign promise, he promised to renegotiate the JCPOA and get the United States back into the pact. So the negotiation started last Monday, and just concluded in Vienna. Could you tell us a little bit about what happened in Vienna this last year, and whether, as it seems, the negotiation has come to a grinding halt, and basically it has failed to bring the United States into the pact and resume the JCPOA and get the sanctions lifted against the United States? What do you know about what happened in Vienna during last week?
Thank you. Very good question. First, let me say that I'm sure you know that I spent almost 37 years in US-Iran relations, arguing that the only way forward for Iran and the US is to normalize this relationship. I have always been against sanctions, against any partial negotiations between the two countries. And I very loudly opposed the negotiations that led to JCPOA from the day one. I was against it. I continue to be against it, because I believe these partial negotiations will only complicate relations between the two countries, and it will not solve any problem. It's a matter of just, convenience for both sides. That okay, you give me this and I give you that, and then we will come back again to the square one, and then I give you this and you give me that. It's a very bad way of negotiating, of solving a problem that is one of the most complicated, problematic issue of this last 50 years, at least after the World War II in the world. US-Iran relations is a very, 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 very big issue. I think probably the biggest issue of the post-war international issue. Now, first, just to answer your question, in Vienna, of course, the Islamic Republic had gone there just for a deal, basically saying, I am here to get sanctions relieved. And then, of course, US said, okay, you wanted to get sanctions relieved for what? It says, for nothing. You left the JCPOA, returned to JCPOA, lift the sanctions, okay, and then I decide what to do. That's the bottom line. This radical regime in Iran is after the experience with the JCPOA, is very distrustful of not the US, but all of the other five. And they don't just trust them. So therefore, their formula is that you will first lift sanctions, then we will test the market and see if sanctions really have been lifted. And then at the same time, you, America, need to guarantee that you will not leave any new agreement if it was to be, had to be concluded. Then we will get back to the JCPOA as it was negotiated. So they have three conditions: lift sanctions, we will test this lifting, and then you will also guarantee that you will not leave. The United States is not ready for any of this. So Tehran came to Vienna with a position of no negotiation. This is not a position for negotiation. They came to Vienna not to negotiate. Basically, this is what we want, and only then we will consider, other steps. Now, this is, of course, their maximum position. I believe the Islamic Republic also has a minimum position as well, which will emerge in the course of the next few months. And I believe in the interim, they will come to a position of, okay, you lift sanctions and we will freeze our enrichment at this very level. That is, we will not go forward. We will not go backward either. We will just freeze it at this point. And then, instead, you will give us, the sanction relief. This is, I believe, for now, is the minimum position of Tehran. But I believe that what happened in the last meeting was obviously the United States, through Mr. Robert Malley, who is the chief negotiator, had a statement. And the statement was given to the European guy to read it at the meeting. And the Iranian side objected to that statement for two reasons. One, they said, we are not negotiating with the United States of America. So why are you reading their statement? We are not negotiating. So the statement that you are reading from the US is a violation of our agreement that in this negotiation, there is only 4+1, not 5+1. And the second, the tone of the statement was very harsh, obviously, basically threatening, saying that, if you don't agree to return to JCPOA, we have a B plan, and that we will have to implement the other plan. And then at that point, Iran said, this is a negotiation under duress, and that this you are making it a direct negotiation with the US. Now, so they left for now. One thing I have to say here, Professor Kangarlu, as someone who lives in this country, is citizen of this country, teaches in the university in this country, I mean, this country, the United States of America. And the United States of America, that is supposedly a superpower, the biggest economy, the biggest military, the biggest whatever in the world now. I am absolutely shocked and, in fact, what you call humiliated and insulted that the United States of America should do what it did. You are a superpower. You should not be even accepting to negotiate with Iran indirectly. What that means, you are a superpower. You go and sit in another hotel and get the Europeans and Russians and the Chinese to go and negotiate for you? What the hell with that? Who are you?
It is humiliating.
Mr. Biden, this is humiliating. I want to let the whole world know that you are humiliating even a person, Hooshang Amirahmadi, that has another passport in his pocket as well. My friend, that's not the way a superpower does. And then
words, so what
even
you're
more
saying,
humiliating is that Iran will say, I don't even want to hear your words.
So you're advocating that the United States has to take an irreconcilable position with respect to the Islamic Republic, and that will bear more fruit and bring the Islamic Republic to a more amicable and malleable position of behaving, even in terms of nuclear enrichment and in terms of the other two concerns that the United States has. Basically, these three major areas of sanction, there are three major areas of sanction. Only one has to do with, one series of sanctions have to do with the nuclear enrichment and the nuclear activities. One series of sanctions are directly connected to the proxy forces operating, the terrorists operating in Iraq and in Yemen and in Lebanon and in Syria. And then there are a series of sanctions directed to the human rights activities. Obviously, those two sets of related to the proxy forces and the human rights cannot be lifted. And while the Iranian, it is my understanding that the Iranian delegation has asked the Europeans and the Russians and Chinese, the P4+1, that all sanctions, including those three classes of sanctions, have to be lifted. In addition to that, they have demanded that the agreement this time, if there is an agreement this time, that agreement has to be ratified by the Congress or by somehow in some legal way prevent the next administration from tearing it up and putting the Islamic Republic in the same impasse that President Trump did. Obviously, you know better than I do that this in the political structure of the United States, it's impossible for one administration to mandate the next administration to do something or not to do something. So this is either due to the lack of understanding of the delegation of the Islamic Republic and their unawareness of the political structure in the United States, or if they know how the politics works, how the government works in the United States, they have this excessive demand in order to kind of get into some later stage negotiation and swap favors for favors in the future. So I like your idea, the idea that the United States should not subject yourself to humility. But now here's where we are. Here's a President Biden, who promised vigorously during his campaign, during 1 year of campaign, presidential campaign, that will get the United States back on the JCPOA. Maybe he didn't have any idea what are the legal costs to the United States to get back on the JCPOA. Now, because it seems to me that the Islamic Republic is aware of this corner in which President Biden has really subjected himself into. He has really cornered himself, and he has to live with his campaign promises. Now they are putting these excessive demands on the United States so that if president wants to save face by restoring its agreement and bringing the United States back in JCPOA, they are putting all these excessive demands. well, first of all, is that true from your understanding that these two demands have been made? One, all sanctions have to be lifted. Two, there should be a provision that the next administration cannot renege on the agreement, and whether this is an indication of lack of knowledge on the part of the Islamic Republic delegation about the American political structure.
Well, first, as I said, the position the Islamic Republic took when it went to the on the table is a non-negotiation position. It's a no-go position. It's a no-go position. They know that for a fact. They know that for a fact. They are not that stupid. They know that all sanctions cannot go. After all, Americans have two types of sanctions. They call the secondary sanctions and the primary sanctions. Even the first JCPOA did not touch the primary sanctions. Primary sanctions are sanctions that Americans have imposed on themselves, that an American citizen or entity cannot make any deal with the Islamic Republic. Secondary sanctions are sanctions on other countries, that is China or Europe or South Korea, for example, cannot, deal with Iran, and if they do, they will be punished by America. So even the first JCPOA did not touch any aspects of the primary sanctions. The whole issue was on the secondary sanctions, sanctions on other countries. Even then, it was only nuclear-related sanctions, period. Only sanctions that were imposed on Iran for the nuclear reason, not anything else. So the Islamic Republic goes there and says, you have to remove all sanctions, meaning primary sanctions, secondary sanctions, sanctions that relate to nuclear, to non-nuclear, anything. That's a no-go. Nobody in this country has that authority. After all, a lot of the primary sanctions are laws. They have been passed by the Congress. They are not executive orders. Mr. Biden can only lift sanctions that are executive orders. A lot of sanctions on Iran are beyond the executive. They have been put into legislative framework. They are laws. So that is a no-go position. Second, we will then test if you have lifted sanctions means another 2-3 years. Because even if you lift the sanctions today, any sanctions to get actually implemented and you test the implementation will at least take a year. It is not like, you release this and I take it. That's not how sanctions work. There's a whole complex of network internationally. And the third, so that is also no-go. And third, nobody in this country can guarantee that a United States of America, anybody, can leave any agreement, even if the agreement was to be passed by the Congress. Still, nobody can guarantee that that agreement will stay. Why? Because this is a sovereign nation. No sovereign nation will, tie its hands behind its back. This is a sovereign nation. Any agreement, any treaty, any deal is reversible. Any, absolutely any. There is no deal whatsoever that the United States of America cannot reverse. It's a sovereign country. I don't want this anymore. That's it. So that is also a no-go. It's not just that they don't understand the system. I mean, again, I have learned over and over that they don't understand the US system, but this is not even understanding the US system. This is understanding the basic the basic international law of sovereignty, that nations are sovereign entities, that they will never ever tie their hands behind their back. So that is a no-go position for now. But the problem is with Mr. Biden. I have to say, unfortunately, let me tell you what the problem is. Mr. Biden, in the election time, said that I am going to go back to JCPOA. He became president. Why didn't he go back? My question is, why didn't you go back? Who prevented you from going back? Nobody. Nobody, because JCPOA was not a treaty. It was not something that was passed by the Congress. Nobody in the Congress could have stopped him from going back. Nobody. Absolutely 0%. He had the full, absolute, full authority to return to JCPOA. And in fact, Mr. Biden reversed many of the policies of Mr. Trump.
But in this case, going back to JCPOA, because when the United States came out of JCPOA, the US obligation was to cancel all the sanctions, remove all the sanctions, and Islamic Republic's obligation was to stop enrichment, or
yes,
limit at least enrichment. So if United States, so by advocating that United States or President Biden should have gone back to JCPOA, you mean the president should have issued an executive order removing all the sanctions that President Trump imposed?
No, not all the sanctions that President Trump imposed. Lots of the sanctions that were not in place.
Non-nuclear related sanctions.
Yeah. See, I mean, they basically what the US could have said, Mr. Biden, I am going back to the square one. That is to 2015, when, according to that JCPOA, the US lifted all secondary sanctions related to nuclear up to that point, nothing beyond that. There are other sanctions that even Democrats or Republicans put after the JCPOA were negotiated. Those sanctions are not part of the sanctions that were removed with the JCPOA agreement. So the United States could simply say all sanctions that relates secondary sanctions. This is the key word. Secondary is key word.
The sanctions imposable on the countries that do trade with the Islamic Republic.
That is right. That is the meaning of the secondary sanctions, that extraterritorial, we call them extraterritorial sanctions, that the United States will remove all extraterritorial or secondary sanctions that were imposed on the Islamic Republic up to that point, that were lifted with the agreement at June or July 2015. Done. And that means US is back in the JCPOA, and Iran would also have to go back to that square one, which means it would have to reduce its enriched uranium, if anything, to the 300 kilogram level, at 3.67 enrichment level. Okay, and if it has put any centrifuge, IR 1, 2, 3, anything, after the US left, they should have to remove that as well. Going back to a square one on both sides. But the problem is that that Mr. Biden started, negging on that, promise, is it started rethinking, and it's basically procrastinated. And this procrastination left Iran with no option but to leave the JCPOA and restart the enrichment. Now it has enrichment way above any level that in the past it had before the 2015, and could actually build a nuclear bomb. The question really is, Mr. Biden Mr. Biden made a huge mistake. It is the Mr. Biden's responsibility to accept that. But unfortunately, Mr. Biden made another mistake. First, it procrastinated.
Yeah, delayed the decision on it after
delayed the decision.
And it's almost 1 year after his presidency.
Exactly. Second, after it accepted, and then when it really got Iran back to negotiation, it accepted indirect negotiation with Iran. And that is the humiliation part. That is, why are you doing that? Why you want to negotiate with Iran indirectly? What is this? Who are Europeans? Who are the Russians and Chinese that will negotiate for the US with Iran? That is really humiliating. Okay, it is really humiliating. As I said, as a citizen of this country, I am humiliated with that action. I want Mr. Biden know that, humiliated. I am an Iranian origin person, and yet I'm talking so openly now. I think if I was Mr. Biden, I will pull out from the negotiation completely. I say I'm not going to negotiate.
So in your judgment, is the nuclear agreement JCPOA, the signing of the JCPOA, is it to the best interest, national interest of the United States?
Listen, it doesn't matter. I think it didn't matter. You know why? Because the United States national interest is the national interest of Israel. It is the national interest of Saudi Arabia. It is the national interest of Europe. It is a very complicated national interest. Okay, it wasn't like the decision wasn't just for American national interest.
But we know that what the position of Israelis and Saudi Arabians and the Emiratis are on the nuclear arrangement. They are absolutely against any agreement. They don't want the United States to have any agreement with the Islamic Republic.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter. It was the America that made the decision. It wasn't, you know, these guys. It wasn't Europe. It wasn't China. It wasn't Moscow. It was the United States of America. The nuclear deal, JCPOA, was a deal between the United States of America and Iran the executive level.
Right.
Not even the legislature or anything, just executive.
But so the United States actually brought the rest of the crowd into the picture just to indicate some kind of multinationality.
To muddy the field. To muddy the field.
So they had multinationality, no yes.
Some of them played the good guy, the good cop. Some of them played the bad cop.
But I've never heard anyone actually answering the question I just raised, that whether the signing of this agreement is to the best interest of the United States. And this is the reason why I'm asking this question is the following.
I tell you what it is. I believe it was not.
It was not, yes.
I tell you why. Let me tell you just a few, okay. First, the United States of America is not threatened by Iran's nuclear enrichment. Just assume for a second that Iran will go and build 5 bombs, 10 bombs, right? Israel already have at least 200 of them. 100 is Pakistan has, 300-400 India has. The United States of America has 12,000 of it. Russia has 10,000. China has 7,000. European altogether have over 12,000. The world is full of bombs. You know, from the World War I, World War II, when the first bomb was, exploded on China, since then, the number of bombs has increased by probably, I would say, 70,000, 80,000 times. There were 2-3 bombs. Now there is almost 100 bombs. 1,000 bombs. I'm sorry, 100,000. I mean 100,000 bombs. And you know what? The bomb, and this is the key word, everybody knows that the bomb has become a peacemaker. The bomb is a peacemaker. I believe if the world didn't have these bombs, there would have been the 2nd, 3rd, and the 4th World War already. The bomb kept the World War III behind the scene. Why countries don't fight? America and China, America and the Soviet Union, because of the bomb. Bomb became a peacemaker. Bomb today is a peacemaker. Israel had this many bomb and had this many war with Arabs, right? Could Israel drop a bomb on an Arab country? No. Did it drop a bomb on Arab countries? No. So what is the usefulness of this bomb? And Iran has a bomb. Okay, so what Iran going to do? Iran knows that it has 5, 10 bombs, and the minute he is, starts thinking of using it, the whole Islamic Republic, the Iranian country, is all down the drain, completely wiped out, completely wiped out. I mean, what is this? This bomb is a joke. This issue of bomb is a joke.
So why do you think the United States is demonstrating so much sensitivity towards the Islamic Republic developing the technology of building bombs?
There is other problems, because there is other problem. This Islamic Republic, this took American hostage, they humiliated them. American hate this group of people who run this country, Mr. Obama, Mr. Biden, Mr. Trump, and they're all generation of the hostage.
So why don't they, administration after administration, if that is really the reason, if Americans' feelings and pride were injured by the hostage taking of 1979 by Ayatollah Khomeini, why don't the United States apply a blanket sanctions against the Islamic Republic and never negotiate removing them? Why are they invoking this nuclear enrichment issue and lifting and then restoring and lifting and then all? What is this game? I mean, that's why I'm asking whether
unfortunately, from the Carter time onward, Democrats and Republicans have increasingly weakened America. Suddenly there is a change of heart, I don't know, or mind, or whatever it is. America is not acting just like what it was. Remember, America was never a warmonger. Really wasn't until recently. They got into the World War II, by the fact that the Japanese really attacked them. They got frightened. America, I have asked, this is very interesting. America knows that it can use force against the Islamic Republic and bring it to its knees. They can, of course they can. They have all the means they need, but they are not ready to use it. They are not ready to use it because they don't have that will, the will to use. That will to use force in America is dead. The only time they did use it was on Saddam Hussein, and that Saddam Hussein really had passed the American red line. The Islamic Republic, after the hostage issue, has never crossed American red line. The Islamic Republic for 40-some years have said, I'm going to destroy Israel. We all know that that's a joke, and that is a propaganda. That after 43 years, the Islamic Republic has not even sent a missile toward Israel. It's just a joke. And Israel hit them in Syria, the Islamic Republic would not respond. And in fact, the Islamic Republic took the forces out. The Quds force, where is the Quds force? They are back in Tehran. There is no Quds force in the region anymore, a few here and there. Okay, so the Islamic Republic and the American administration throughout this 40 years came up with an understanding between them. And that understanding is that the best option for us is no war, no peace. We don't fight, we don't make peace. And they have been living with it. And Europe, Israel, Arabs, they have been all forced into accepting it. No war, no peace. All right. And this was imposed on the US by the Islamic Republic. And that was their intelligence. They were really intelligent to design this no war, no peace. Anytime we move in the direction of war, Mr. Khamenei, okay, issues the policy of flexible heroism, right? And anytime that we go more toward the peace, it issues the policy of flexible tension. The flexible tension versus the other one, okay, heroism. The point is they have all came to this point that, listen, no war, no peace. And I can tell you, whatever it takes, the Islamic Republic will do to maintain this status quo of no war, no peace. My argument for years in the US-Iran relations with Americans have been, you are dumb. You are a bunch of dumb people to accept this no war, no peace. The way you do, you take the no war, no peace option off the table. And then you say to Iran, the only option on the table is war or peace. War or peace. But stupid Americans, policymakers, they say all options are on the table. That is no policy. This is the most stupid, lunatic policy that a power could put on the table for a second, third-rate power. That all options on the table. Now, in Tehran, you know what for them, what all options means? All options mean no war, no peace. Because in the all options, there are war, there are peace, there are no war, no peace.
And you think that no war, no peace is against the interest of the United States?
No, it's against their interest. But
right.
They have been forced into accepting it. I have been telling America, it is
not.
Why
is that administration after
it's not in the interest of Iran either. It is not in the interest of Iran either.
But it is in the interest of Mr. Khamenei.
Exactly. It is in the interest of their nizam, their regime. It is not in the interest of the US in any way.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
United States.
So why does US pursue this failed policy that is against its national interests? Why is that administration after administration is pursuing it? The only one in the last 43 years post-revolution in Iran, the only president who actually withdrew from that conventional wisdom was President Trump. Why Biden went back to that if it's so clear, as you're saying it should be, that the United States should not negotiate no peace, no war, and it should say either full diplomatic relations or war. That's what you're basically advocating. Yeah, I've been advocating this for a long time. Either war or peace. And I have a plan. I said, you Americans say the war and peace is out. There is war or peace, either war or peace. Now we Americans wanted to offer you a peace plan. For the peace plan, here is what we are ready to pay, the cost for that peace. And if you are ready to pay for that peace as well, then we are done. The normalized relation, all of these issues go. But if you don't, then the war will come. And I believe, I have said over and over in the State Department, that Tehran will take the peace. Why? Because it cannot fight America. And at that point, Iranian will get into the streets. Just think about it. Mr. Biden goes there and says the Iranian people, I have the regime a peace or a war plan. Here is the peace plan, and here are the peace will go, all the sanctions will go, our relation will normalize. We are back to square one before the revolution. Or if they don't accept it, we go to the war plan. What you think about Iranian people will do? Millions will pour in the streets. Millions will pour in the streets. Who wants war with America? And who doesn't want sanctions relieved, relations improved? But unfortunately, the dumb foreign policy makers don't understand this.
they don't understand Iran, and they have lost that will, okay, to be resolute. You know, it's funny. One day I put this issue in the State Department with a major person. I don't want to talk the name. You know what the person told me? He said, Hooshang, what will happen if they take the war option? I looked at him. I said, I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you are a dumb person. Honestly, you really are dumb to think that the Islamic Republic will take the war option with the US. Man, think about it. You know, it just showed to me that either that person is completely lunatic, or he has lost the will to use American power. Beyond that, I think that person should have not been in the State Department for a second. Unfortunately, the State Department, the foreign policy establishment, has been completely, either humiliated or I don't know what. When we talk to them, they are humiliated. There's people, Tehran easily humiliates them. Easily, think about it. This is a superpower that is indirectly negotiating with Tehran, and the way it is, this is the way it is. The 4+1 with Iran are in this hotel negotiating. Tehran, Mr. Mali, is in that another hotel, okay, and is listening and getting these messages back and forth. Isn't that humiliating?
It is humiliating, and it's frustrating, and it's against the national interest of Iran, against the national interest of the United States.
Against the national interest of anything there.
But
But
it's a game that's been played for the last 43 years, and it seems like you and I are not in the position to change it, even though the only thing we are doing what we can do, talking about it and sharing our version of our analysis with our audience. But where do we go from here? So Antony Blinken, yesterday, after the negotiations were concluded in Vienna, he tweeted that he read the proposal that the Europeans have forwarded to the United States and received from the Islamic Republic delegation. And after reading the proposal, the two proposals, I don't know why there were two proposals, but after reading the proposal, he came away with the conclusion that the Islamic Republic is not serious about negotiations. Apparently, the demands that the Islamic Republic has put in the United States is so excessive that even Antony Blinken cannot withhold his frustration with them calling it unserious about negotiation. So what's going to happen?
Yeah, my thing is, Mr. Blinken, why should they be serious with the United States? You guys have already humiliated. You are not negotiating. You are in that other, they are negotiating in a 5-star hotel, the most expensive hotel. You guys are in the 4-star hotel next door.
So that's right. Why should they take you seriously when the United States so easily,
Mr. Blinken,
so easily get intimidated?
That's right. You are. Again, as I started saying, the Islamic Republic didn't go to Vienna to negotiate. They didn't go to there negotiate.
They want to play the game.
They were very loud about it. The problem is Mr. Blinken didn't listen to them, did not hear them. Before they go to Vienna, they said we have these 3 conditions: that all sanctions go, that there has to be a test of sanctions lifted, and that you will guarantee. Mr. Blinken did not hear them. And then at the end of the day, he is surprised. Why are you surprised? Why didn't you listen to them? Why did you, after they said all that, why did you go?
Well, they were hoping that the Islamic Republic was bluffing, claiming, demanding those 3 areas of lifting.
Even if you bluff, you have a position. Any bluff is a position. Mr. Blinken would have said, if I said that's a no-go. I'm so sorry. We don't negotiate.
Well, I think the United States is relying on the effectiveness and the cutting capabilities of the sanctions. The sanctions are really hurting Islamic Republic, and the United States is counting that the Islamic Republic is coming to the negotiating table because of the biting aspect, but the biting nature of these sanctions, and relying on the damages that the sanctions are inflicting on the Iranian economy. I guess you can understand that why United States went to these negotiations, hoping that the Islamic Republic has learned that US can do even worse, can make the sanctions even worse than what it has been so far.
They can do anything with sanctions. Well, they will never get Iran on its knees on sanctions. And more importantly, it will never get a deal that will last with that sanctions. I think the only option for the United States of America is first, we say, I will only negotiate directly and bilaterally. Who are Russians and Chinese and Europeans in this game?
You're actually making the negotiations awkward and indirect and ineffective.
That's right. So I will offer to US, to Iran, direct bilateral negotiation, number one. Number two, I will put on the table for Iran war or peace, and will deliver on both. If the United States takes these two steps, it will succeed with Iran. Otherwise, the United States will go around the circle ever.
Well, I think that's a good concluding point and remarks about our conversations today. It's obviously a fascinating approach and fascinating insight that you have about how U.S. relationship with Islamic Republic should be managed going forward. And if I want to summarize your position of, if you had the ear of the U.S. president, you would have advised him to get out of Vienna, completely forget about JCPOA, let JCPOA die, let Islamic Republic go ahead with its nuclear enrichment if they think that would be their strongest negotiating point, and offer either direct negotiations, direct conversations about establishment of full diplomatic relationship or going to war. And you think that would be more effective because this other approach has not borne any fruit in the last 43 years. Is that a fair summation of your position with respect to JCPOA?
Yes, absolutely. But also going to war, before they go into war, remember I said that you would give them a peace plan, a big carrot. If the carrot is not taken, then you deliver the stick, the big stick.
Yes.
All right. But I believe if the United States was to offer the big plan, the big carrot, Iran will take it, because the Islamic Republic is not in a position to reject that, given the Iranian people's demand for a better life, okay, and for the sanctions go and they live, get into the better life. So again, yes, I think if I was US, I will walk out of this Vienna framework, completely get out of this 5+1 framework. I will offer Iran first direct bilateral negotiation, and right at that point will offer Iran two options: war and peace. The war, of course, is war. The peace that's direct negotiation, and that is that during that negotiation, US has to be prepared to offer Iran a big carrot, so then it has to take it. Otherwise, the war will come. And I believe, again, there will never be a war, because the Islamic Republic cannot fight the United States of America, period.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Amirahmadi, for fascinating insight into this matter. Definitely a different approach to negotiation and management of international relations, at least when it comes to US-Iran relationship. We are going to conclude our program here, and hope that next week we can continue our conversation with you on a different topic that probably would be resumption of, if negotiations get resumed, in Vienna, since all delegations have been sent home and there's been a week of recess announced, and probably they will be back in Vienna a week from now. And at that point, we would have a better understanding of how they have regrouped and how they have repositioned themselves for another round of negotiation or completely bringing them to a halt. So thank you very much, and we will say farewell to our audience, and we will see them next week.
Thank you. Thank you for this good discussion.